Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Deal Makers. I am very excited today. We're joined by the one and only Mary Nollenberger from Orion. And we're going to be talking all sorts of fun things about commercial real estate, specifically in Arizona. Mary has a wealth of knowledge. In fact, before I go any further, Mary, I want to have you take a moment just to introduce yourself. Tell us specifically what you do in commercial real estate. What's your niche or your specialty, would you say?
Well, my specialty is my passion, and that is retail. And our team specialty is taking properties from identification to acquisition, stabilization, and having a plan for disposition, whether that's in the near future, distant future, or having a plan with the investors that we represent. So taking the pulse of their property and constantly, just like you would with an accountant or an attorney, looking at the picture of the health of your investments, watching that all the way through.
And you bring a pretty unique skill set. There's a lot of commercial real estate advisors or brokers out there who do just investment sales or who do just leasing, but you really can straddle both of those worlds. And so if someone has a half vacant property, you can take it, like you said, from that whole life cycle of leasing up, backfilling that vacancy, bringing it up to the full pro forma value. And, should they choose to take it to market and, get top dollar for what that property is worth. So that's unique and special. And I'm interested personally to dive in a little bit about what your guys' strategies are to fill up buildings with vacancy. And I know you've had a lot of experience that, especially in the last year or two with, kind of the wild roller coaster we've been on. But let's do this. Let's start it off on a positive, exciting note. This is Deal Makers. And I would love to hear about a recent win or deal that you've been working on that you could share with, anyone tuning in today that might get inspired or excited or get a good idea from something that you've just closed recently or been working on.
Absolutely. So one exciting project that we've been working on for the past few years is an acquisition made by a developer from Tucson. And we've taken that property from being absolutely vacant and about 200,000 square feet. And we're finishing up the final couple of leases to bring it to 100% occupied. And so that has been just a really exciting adventure. And, the perception, I think right now we're building bridges between the perception that retail is not performing to the reality of the strength that we have in the market, especially in the East Valley, and that property is in Chandler. And so looking at Intel and the megafab growth, it's amazing to see that with industry follows housing. Those people that are going to be working in that Intel plant are living in the Fulton Ranch area. They need the retail services. So it's a domino effect of positive energy.
That's a really important fact. And for those tuning in who aren't as familiar with retail real estate as maybe you and me, we do it on a daily basis. Can you connect those dots? So, Intel makes a big announcement. All these jobs are coming here. How does that impact a shopping center? Like, walk us through that.
So, for example, Intel with this new expansion is predicting that there'll be 3,000 very high wage positions and about 15,000 jobs coming into that area over time. Chris Keeler from Northrop Grumman just was quoted talking about the fact that he is looking at that Gilbert campus as a way to bring talent to his company because it is in the Valley of the Sun. So they're both looking at the employees of their company having a really high level lifestyle at an affordable, reality. And so bringing talent, because of Chandler, because of Gilbert, and then having retail serve the needs of those that are living close to where they work, just builds a community and builds the energy and momentum around it.
You and I were talking earlier, is like, what's changed for the Southeast Valley today? Is that largely what put it on the map nationally, is announcements like that?
Exactly. So there are 519 companies that have moved into Arizona in the past 5 years, 238 of them in the past 18 months.
Wow.
So those companies moving and bringing that energy and residential growth into those markets is huge. So they're referring to it as the Silicon Desert versus Silicon Valley.
Yeah, I like it.
The tech industry, has 238 manufacturing operations that have relocated 38% in 18 months. It's just, it is affecting everything in our world, residential and commercial, because it is a domino effect. And the dots are housing, following industry, needing retail. And retail, for example, in that particular property, we have the restaurants that are a part of that community, even in the world of COVID in 2020, had a year-over-year increase of almost 30%, 37% in some cases of increase, because they pivoted so quickly. They didn't get paralyzed. They found ways to navigate and work around the situation very quickly. And that's what we have found in retail, is those that were able to implement strategies really quickly and not get hung up and paralyzed have done the best.
Yeah. You just reminded me of a couple interesting points here. If you guys are tuning in live and you have any questions or comments or feedback from Mary, drop it in the comment box. We can pull up those questions in real time. And say hello, do a little bit of networking here on the show. That's one of the beautiful things about doing this live, or even if you're going to end up watching this after the fact, you can comment and Mary or I could jump in and tackle any questions or have some insightful comments. So I think, Mary, you and I are both fans of Arizona. I invest there exclusively. You work there, I think, exclusively. For those folks that are outside of Arizona, what do you think are some of the important things for people to know or consider that might be interested in placing capital or investing in commercial real estate that make it unique or different? I'm not saying Arizona is right or wrong, but it certainly has some unique characteristics. What would you say?
I think unique and different would be, I will say that rolling out the red carpet was cited as the biggest example for why so much manufacturing and tech is moving here. And so they quoted, one of the biggest reasons to find a home here is the size of the welcome mat that extends all the way from the office of the governor, when he opened up the potential for autonomous vehicles to be tested and to find their way here. And then accompanied by the efforts of Arizona Commerce Authority, Sandra Watson, they have said that team of business development welcoming businesses to Arizona can't be equaled anywhere. So I would say the kind of retail, our team tracks all of the major REIT quarterly earnings calls, and we send out reports 4 times a year. So watching what the most sophisticated REITs do, how they're trending, we were watching ahead of time to see that actually rents were being collected at a higher rate than people perceived, that Arizona's supply chain was predicted to be back to normal by the beginning of 2021, which they've accomplished. That's huge. So we're seeing the trends that the REITs, and then just looking at the Kimco Weingarten, the top 9 takeaways that they cited was the fact that investors are focused on the retail sector being active and alive, much more alive than perceived, if it is within a Sunbelt area with open air mall kind of situation, access. 82% grocery anchor driven, or service, retail, fitness, entertainment. So in looking at acquisitions like we do for you or the investors that we work with, finding that balance of those tenants that, like Greg talked about, big box used to be the way to go. And now looking at the fact that there needs to be kind of a balance of those really sustainable tenants that aren't necessarily national, but they are very functional, internet proof, experiential, and that mix. We've always been really tuned into synergy and providing a really great mix in properties. And Sunbelt is quoted over and over and over again as the way to go.
So that just makes me think of, COVID and all that happened, over the last, 18 months almost now. I'm curious, everyone's journey for that has been different, especially in retail. And every one of my friends or colleagues or people who invest alongside me has asked, like, what happened to your centers? What happened to your tenants? And I'm curious, from your vantage point, what was that experience like? Because I know you were doing a lot of Jill of all trades, right? You're helping in so many capacities. So maybe share with us what that was like for you, and what happened to some of these tenants and people who either didn't make it or did make it, through kind of that really challenging spot. And Arizona was different than a lot of places, right? Places shut down, but it reopened relatively quickly, compared to California. And so give everyone what it was like from your vantage point. So
the very first day, and the very first thing that I did, and my team jumped on this with me, is to reach out to every landlord that we represent and explain the true definition of force majeure. Because the perception, which was not reality, is, oh, this means that I don't have to pay rent. This means that I can cancel my lease. So getting clear on what does it mean, what doesn't it mean, what is that strategy going to look like? Forbearance, forgiveness, blend and extend, and coming up with strategies that would allow, because we had no idea how long the pandemic was going to last, how much time was going to be necessary. And so getting a clear understanding of, this does not mean that your tenants can cancel their leases. It doesn't mean that they don't have to pay rent. It means that we need to find strategies to work with tenants. And I think tenants did not understand the perception that many of these landlords weren't being given forbearance by their lenders. And so they were needing to pay their mortgage on time without grace, despite what was happening on the other end. So we found ways to, on an individual basis, and I think that was a big point that, I listened to the Whitestone REIT quarterly earnings calls, and Jim Mastandrea, that was a big point that he made, is communication was key with them up front, and looking at each tenant on a case-by-case basis. And where some of the big national tenants took the stance that we're not going to pay rent because we can, versus tenants that did not miss a rent payment because they could. Right. They could pay their rent, and they were honorable in doing that. And so we developed a strategy to help our landlords, their property managers, reach out and communicate and receive communication back from those tenants to figure out exactly how they needed to handle each of them on a case-by-case basis. And we did not see the number of tenants going out of business. I mean, that percentage was really low compared to perception. And just getting in the mindset that they needed a hot second to figure it out.
Right.
What are we going to do?
And so those who've survived through that challenging period, like it feels like we're turning a corner, at least, from my gut. Are you feeling that same way? Are you starting to see, things really kind of come up? I hear people talk about, what is it, like either the roaring 20s or what was the other term that was used by Greg the other day? Like not angry capital, revenge spend, and that people are ready to go out and spend a bunch of money. But are you seeing some of these tenants really start to thrive now and take off?
Absolutely. And I think the biggest word I would say with regard to that we're seeing is expansion and taking advantage of a perceived time of opportunity. And it's not that there's huge vacancy. The Metro Phoenix, so CoStar just came out with their first quarter report, 7% vacancy. It's, the Phoenix metro area isn't experiencing huge vacancy, and yet there's a perception that this is the time for us to take advantage of. I think the greatest opportunity is people wanting to be back out and in community and gathering and being able to be together. So if they're going to be out doing that, this is a time for me to add another location to my restaurants. Or we're working with 2 national expansions of dessert concepts. And so it's time to grow. And it's fun.
That is fun. I mean, that's music to my ears because, I buy buildings with a lot of vacancy. And so when I hear tenants expanding, it's just, that's contrary to, I think, what a lot of people read in the big media headlines. It's like this store is closing and that chain went bankrupt and this happens. Like, yeah, those are like the blood in the streets where you see the headlines. But, here, on the ground, you're working with people that are opening up new locations in rapid expansion mode. So that's fun to hear.
And I tend to be, sunshine. So I have to be careful of that. So the quote that you and I talked about that is my favorite, that grounds me in reality, is the Stockdale paradox. So you must never confuse the faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your reality, whatever they may be. And that's from James Stockdale, who was a prisoner of war. And what he discovered is the people that made it through alive were the ones that didn't confuse the fact that this is going to be fine, this is no big deal. I lived through the recession. So looking at the pandemic, I can say, okay, I'm battle tested. I'm proven to have survived by saying, okay, it's not going to be over tomorrow. This is a tough situation, but what we're going to do with it is find a way to navigate it to survive in the end. And the brutal facts of the fact that this is going on are real, but I'm not going to let that paralyze me. Mm-hmm. I'm going to concentrate on those people in great volume right now that are reaching out and wanting to make deals, acquire properties, look at selling their properties. Is this the right time? And we have to provide that guidance in a real sense. It's not looking at, oh, I can talk you into selling your property. It's doing a diagnostic approach of, okay, you could sell it right now. This is what it would look like. I sat down with a couple last night. You and I were talking about this before we came on, from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. And I've been entrusted with the care of their properties because I sold their daughter a property to operate her medical practice. So I had to sit down with them and say, this is where you're at. If we replace, backfill that tenant, and I can get you to market rent, which you're not at right now. That little bit of difference between being below market and being at market will make this kind of difference in your disposition, proceeds. So this is what we need to, here's our prescriptive program of getting you to where you really should be.
Got it. Yeah. I have a selfish question for you. There's obviously landlords that had challenges coming out of this, and not in a negative way necessarily, but is there opportunities on the horizon, given what you're doing every day and what you're seeing in the trends, that you think would be a unique opportunity to invest in right now? Is it a part of town? Is it an asset class size? Is it a category? Where you think, gosh, this is so hot right now and it's headed in the right direction that, if you were going to deploy a bunch of capital into a deal or two this year, what would you be, closely looking at or considering yourself? You can maybe share your personal favorite.
So I think, what we're going to see is a shift. What I've been seeing is we're going to have to look at combining physical presence with online fulfillment. And I think having physical tangibility with warehousing capability, so that last mile distribution, I think we're going to see, and this isn't, I'm not in a position to acquire mall properties, but I think seeing those become mixed use, looking at what Macerich and Red Development are doing with PV Mall, looking at, there are some properties that have been vacant for a very long time, and a very large property would be the closed Sam's Club. That's like 140,000 square feet. And Airstream, it is going to open a location there. So seeing some of those properties be completely repurposed to, mixed use, which they were not before. Right. So looking at, I think opportunity lies in looking at how some properties that would be deemed very volatile retail and how they can be used, maybe repurposed. And for a person like yourself that wants to look at fixer-upper type properties and saying, what out of the box kind of synergistic combination can we repurpose this property with that would make it thrive in the future? So I love those challenges, and I know you do too.
Yep.
That's how we met.
Fun, right? Anything in the last year or two that's changed? Well, first of all, you're at Orion now after what, almost a decade and a half. So I know that's a change. But anything else that's changed in your business that you'd like to share?
I think, I'll tell you a change in our business. And Ari and Sean at Orion are so proactive about tools and being open-minded about technology. So one thing that we've added to our toolkit is Placer AI, which is a technology that just fascinates me. And it allows, so it's a cell phone device tracking platform that allows us to look at properties and when working with an investor, say, this Sprouts, it has the most traffic of, as compared to these grocers or to the other Sprouts or any, national retailers. And we can look at where people are coming from, how long they're staying, where they're going when they depart the property location. And it is fascinating. And Ari and Sean purchased it for us with the, understanding that I'll be glad to provide this technology if you promise you'll use it. And so we've been using it nonstop and just blown away by the capabilities of being able, both with our tenant representation, to say, okay, this property makes sense because it is the highest volume, grocer in the area, or being able to look at, or in doing diagnostics with an investor, say, we're looking at this property and how, 6 of the tenants are performing against other locations in the area. That's been the biggest change in kind of my business model, is to look at taking advantage of that kind of technology that we've never been exposed to before.
I mean, that just puts a smile on my face, because sometimes I feel like the commercial real estate industry is a dinosaur, right? And very slow moving and kind of behind some of the other industries. So using data like you just described to reverse engineer some of these tenants, they're going to be the best fit in the best location. And I know you do a lot of work with site selection too. And the fact that we're able to rely on accurate numbers now versus gut feelings is just a complete game changer. I got to imagine it makes you more efficient. You can go out and do more deals. You can help your landlords fill more vacancy, maximize the value of properties more. And I bet you're getting more deals done, probably because you're working more efficiently with a tool like that.
Absolutely. And you know what? You and I agree about this. Statistics and real numbers and facts. I can't have an investor say, what does the market look like in Phoenix? I have to say, here's the fact. The net inflow into the Phoenix market put it #1 above Dallas, Orlando, Tampa, Austin, with 82,601, new, companies, people, everything that I quoted to you about 238 companies in the last 18 months and 519 in 5 years, and a predicted 15,000 jobs. And here's another one, manufacturing jobs, 138,000 in 2020, forecast of 143,424 by 2025. An investor that's not living in our market needs to know, here's why the Phoenix market has a forecast. Here, I can show you on a graph that vacancy is declining, not increasing. I can do predictive kind of values on those kind of factors that are really important when making a decision. So nothing in our world as a team is vague. We don't, it's looking, Phoenix market is this or that or whatever. I need to be able to look at analytics and say where we are today and where we're going to be in the future based upon real facts and numbers.
Right. Absolutely. We're kind of wrapping it up here, Mary. Any other updates or surprises or tidbits that you think would be valuable for our listeners or our viewers to have top of mind, for what they're doing with their investments for the rest of 2021?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you, my surprise fact was that when I was doing research, the 2 states that are perceived as being the top for tech are California and Texas.
Right.
And the fact was revealed that these 2 states were the origination of where most of the relocations were coming from into our market. So that was a surprise fact for me. But
California and Texas are moving to Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Those were the 2 states that comprised the greatest percentage of relocation of companies into our market. So I just think that looking at everything that surrounds those decisions and lines up with the volume of influx into those markets, into those locations, the Apple Command Center, Northrop Grumman, all of the industry that's coming our way. And then if you're not It's predicted that our industrial market by the end of this year is going to be number 1 or 2 in the nation. If you're an investor and you invest in retail, not industrial, that's okay, because the retail that's serving the community of those industrial placements is going to be the recipient of that value as well.
Right. It's all interconnected, right?
Right.
Mary, there's some gems that you shared there. I know we barely scratched the surface. I appreciate you taking the time to do this with us live, and for anyone who tuned in live or after the fact. Who should reach out to you for more information, insight? I'm thinking landlords, tenants. Who's your ideal client that you'd want to reach out and say hello to you?
Every person connected with any of the things that you mentioned. So we love doing work with investors. We love helping to provide education to investors that don't live in our market, that need to know what's going on with boots on the ground here. So we work with investors, landlords. We do a lot of tenant representation. So, anyone and everyone, we love everything retail. And then I serve the needs of my clients who are needing properties or locations outside of the retail niche, because I have clients that need industrial space. I'm selling a couple of pieces of land right now that had not gotten a lot of action, and suddenly both of them are in escrow. And so we serve the needs of people. We have relationships with people, and those are my clients, and so I'm very, very relationship driven, and however we can serve the needs of those that we can help through our service are the people that we want to work with. So all of the above.
Yeah. And I imagine too, you do some owner user deals. And so tenants that have historically leased, throughout their operation, if they wanted to buy a building, you could help with that as well.
I have 3 of them that are in escrow or going into escrow right now, because we did make that decision. You're going to be placing a lot of tenant improvement into a property. It might as well be yours.
Great point. Great point. Let's see, Mary, I think I can pull up your contact info here on the screen. There is your email and phone number. So if you'd like to reach out to Mary, it is in there. We should probably put that in the LinkedIn comments too. Connect with Mary on LinkedIn. Again, thank you guys for joining live. Good to see you here on Deal Makers. Mary, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I look forward to reviewing more deals with you this year. So.
Oh, thanks, Sean. I always look forward to doing deals with you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
You got it. Take care, everyone. See ya.
All right. Thank you.